The Atelier franchise is coming back to Azur Lane. Today's video is a data mine of the newest event, the Alchemist and the Tower on the Horizons, which is a collaboration event between Azur Lane and Atelier Yumia. Yostar revealed this event in a live stream earlier this week that I covered. Of course, after giving a sneak peek into the 8th anniversary and showcasing a bus tour in Hokkaido. And so that brings us to today's update. The asset files bless us with a brand new Siren character. The cruise mission season also turns over on August 1st. This brings us brand new Dunkerque META, which we'll go over later in the video. Also hidden in the patch notes bug fixes, they address fixing the Augment Modules, which in some cases were granting only 10% of their stated weapon efficiency. Kind of funny because I just called that out literally in my last video. And her plane efficiency boost is going to help her keep up with power creep, assuming it's not bugged like a bunch of the other augment modules like Centaur. Really glad to see this fixed. Also, as part of releasing this brand new Atelier Yumia event, they are also going to be rerunning the Atelier Ryza event. What idiot would ever suggest that this collab would never rerun? However, these will be the first augment modules that are going to be locked exclusively to an event. And given it's a collab event, it will probably never come back. Jokes aside, this rerun is a rare instance where Azur Lane is able to rerun an event with collaboration IP, so take advantage of that. But why they decided to have this rerun event of Atelier Ryza be running concurrently with the Atelier Yumia event is interesting. Atelier Ryza the first time was a very intense event, often regarded by players as one of the highest effort events released by the Azur Lane devs. That event released 6 brand new characters along with their exclusive augment modules, on top of 11 new exclusive items. It certainly was a very unique event, so much so that my data mine video of this event back in November of 2022 took nearly 50 minutes. And so I won't be talking much about the Atelier Ryza rerun in today's video. If you want, you can always go back and watch that old data mine video on that event. It holds up pretty well, with the pinned comment at least. So all I'll add is that if you care about PvP, make sure that you pick up a copy of the Werbo Luft from this rerun. It definitely has a unique and useful set of stats. However, today's event is also fully loaded. We get 4 new SR collaboration ships, along with their special unique augment modules, and 7 brand new equipment. The gameplay of the event itself is also going to be involved. After clearing stage T5, you're going to access the core nexus function. There's also going to be an SP and an EX stage. These are going to give you different boosts. Additionally, there's going to be a lot of synthesizing again. Clearing the different event stages will get you these synthesis materials. You'll need them to get these collab limited augment modules, gears, and gear skins, as well as build up your Atelier Yumia base and craft different furniture. Also, now's a good time to point out that we will get new gear skins as well as new dorm themes. 3 of them. As with every new event, we will get new skins. I hope you're ready to bake. They are all dynamic motion. Only 7 new ones in total though. The 4 new girls each get one. 2 girls from the rerun event will also get new skins. Kala Ideas definitely needed one. And the only ship that got a new skin is Chowho. With that all out of the way, let's get into the specifics of the ships. Before I go into today's 4 collab ships, I want to cover the new meta ship that comes out at the beginning of next month. Obviously, the paid version includes Montpellier's skin, but we'll be getting Dunkerque META for free. Stat-wise, she's very similar to her base model, slightly less health, slightly more firepower. However, most importantly, she keeps her preloaded main gun mount, but also gives up her 3rd shot on each salvo. That'll be a hard thing to overcome. Skill number 1, when this ship fires her main gun, 70% chance to fire a special barrage. Enemies hit by this barrage reduce their speed by 30% and their evasion by 3% for 8 seconds. As with most French ships, this barrage has HE ammo and can inflict burn. This skill effectively makes her a barrage battleship. You want a very fast firing gun on her. She also has a preloaded, so this will trigger at the beginning of the battle. Window's pretty good too. However, the 70% proc chance is a big downside. You can't guarantee it, so that's a struggle. Skill number 2, she gets a flat plus 15% firepower and hit stat. That's nice. Also, every 20 seconds, all enemies reduce their firepower by 5% for 8 seconds. This covers the whole map. If more than 2 enemies are inflicted with this debuff, basically meaning they were on the screen, then you're going to heal herself 8% and 1 random Vanguard fleet ship. So she has a heal. This is really nice. It's pretty unlikely that you won't get the heal at the 20-second mark. It's random, so you don't have the good targeting, but 8% is significant. Her third skill is just the Cinders of Hope. When she's fighting a Siren Elite in Operation Siren, she gets plus 8% damage dealt. Overall, this ship's not that bad. Definitely a clear upgrade over the original Dunkirk. She's got a preloaded, she has a barrage that causes fire and slow. She also has a heal. Not too bad, all things considered. So with that out of the way, let's get to the Atelier Yumia ships. Each Atelier Yumia ship will get a brand new augment module that's exclusive to only them. You'll need to synthesize these augment modules, and they are event exclusive. However, all of these ships, to reach their full potential, need their exclusive augment module. There is no case where you don't want to have these augment modules for when you use these specific ships. For that reason, when I talk about these ships, I'm going to assume that their augment module is equipped. This goes for their stats, their modified effect, and their upgraded skill. I just don't want to spend so much time on these because you literally are just going to auto-equip these. They're all really good for the ships they're meant for. Also, another quick note, which will hopefully help you better understand these skills. These new Atelier Yumia girls have something called a mana stream. This operates very similarly to AP in the Atelier Ryza event. It's shared across all the ships in the fleet, and many skills reference it. As part of the game mechanic though, when the mana stream reaches 100%, all Atelier Yumia characters in the fleet enter the state of descent, and the mana stream is set back to 0%. I just think this is important for context while we're going through these specific ship skills. Alright, first up we're going to have Yumia herself. She is an SR light carrier. Stat-wise, she's actually pretty good for a light aircraft carrier. Light aircraft carriers tend to have a lot worse stats than their aircraft carrier counterparts, but she generally has higher stats than Centaur, who's generally considered a very good light aircraft carrier. Unfortunately, she only has 6 planes, Centaur has 8 for example, because she has the curse of the light aircraft carrier in which she only has 2 plane slots, in this case 3 fighters and 3 torpedo bombers. However, her third gear slot, which for light aircraft carriers typically is an anti-air gun, can be equipped with a third auxiliary gear instead of the anti-air gun. This is a really interesting tech, and the Atelier series has no shortage of auxiliary gear to equip here. Alright, let's move on to the skills. Skill number 1. Every 10 seconds, she's going to trigger an equipped auxiliary's prop effect at random. So a lot of these new equipment are going to have special barrages basically, and she's going to actually be able to trigger them multiple times. So that kind of gets very interesting and potentially abusable. Interestingly enough, since it's at random, if one of the prop effects is so much better than the others, it might be worth just equipping one item that has a prop effect and 2 other auxiliary items that have no prop effects. That way guaranteeing you get the prop effect you want. Also, she's going to trigger a special attack, so this is going to add extra damage from her barrage. Also, with the augment module equipped, anytime she fires a prop effect, her next activation of her special attack is going to be reduced by 2 seconds. So instead of 10 seconds, it's 8 seconds. I can definitely envision a world where this is very good. Also, when she's firing this barrage, if there are any enemies within 65 units of this ship, she's going to additionally trigger another special attack, and enemies hit by this barrage are inflicted with armor break. Given that she's a backliner, this might be a little harder to pull off, but 65 units is a good chunk of space. So this skill is very interesting, especially depending on what equipment you put on her, which definitely goes with her theme of flexibility. Skill number 2, she gets a flat plus 15% aviation and hit stat. When she triggers a special attack or launches an airstrike, she's going to gain 1 mana. Now this is not part of the mana stream, this is a separate stack. When a Atelier Yumia character triggers a prop effect, remember this is from the equipment, she's going to consume a mana and improve that prop effect. When this ship triggers a special attack, you adjust the ammo type of that barrage based on the armor type of the target. I am not jealous of coding all of these effects, and deciphering them is also a challenge. She basically has multiple barrages that change based on the distance of enemies, or the stacks that she has accumulated, and each of the equipment have a barrage. Those barrages trigger extra effects for her, and she has a separate boost for each of those prop effects. That is just a lot of variation, permutations galore. Also, a side note, when this ship sinks, you lose 10 mana. Alright, her third and final skill is the one that the augment boosts. Every 5 seconds, she's going to trigger a special attack, either Sharp Stance or Strong Strike, so multiple options here, and it's going to be on a random enemy. When an Atelier Yumia character triggers a prop effect, gain 25% of the mana stream. So this very much is going to be want to put in a fleet full of Atelier Yumia characters so that they can each trigger prop effects, and 25% is a lot, so you're going to fill this up pretty quickly. When the mana stream is greater than 50%, so basically just 2 triggers of her own effect, or when this ship is in the descent state, remember this is when you fill your mana stream to 100%. Every time this ship launches an attack, activate Attack Synthesis, enhance the special attack pattern, and gain 1 mana. So basically, more barrages, and she can turn her mana stream into mana stacks. Also, after the ship launches an airstrike, if the ship is in the descent state, consume all of her mana stacks, and then she's going to trigger an ultimate descent barrage. I think it might be entirely possible that the optimized loadout for Yumia is going to be 3 auxiliary gear, and with a full fleet, she might be doing more damage from all of her different barrages and prop effects than she does from her actual planes. Honestly, for those who like synthesizing and having flexibility and making custom different versions of her, I think this kit is really fun. It's pretty complex. It's not going to break the bank. She's a light aircraft carrier after all, but I do think they did a good job with her. It's interesting seeing a light aircraft carrier that is basically built mostly for herself. Yes, she is going to support others by triggering their extra prop effects and stuff, but she's mainly built to deal her own damage through barrages in an attempt to overcome her hull type classification. All right, with that, let's move on to the next ship, which is Isla. And she is going to be an SR light cruiser. Stat-wise, she's most like Rika from the SSS Gridman collab, or alternatively like Neptune. Not amazing, but not bad either. Her Augment module gives her some nice stats, but also the skill that allows her to reduce the load time of her next torpedo by 2 seconds every time she triggers one of her special attacks. Too bad she's not that good at being a torpedo DPS. Nor does she have a main gun +1 like Dmitry Donskoy. Which is interesting considering her first skill gives her plus 10% firepower and no bonus to the torpedoes that she gets reduced load time on. Every 5 seconds, she's going to trigger a special attack. This special attack does not trigger her Augment module to give her the reduced torpedo time, by the way. It has to be the Heart Reversal or the Ultimate Descent Mindbreaker special attack. This is not one of those, but it will give her 15% to the mana stream, meaning that by herself with this skill alone, it will take about 35 seconds to fill up the mana stream. This barrage that she's triggering is not that bad though, it's pretty good. It actually changes, it puts a lot of damage on the field if an enemy is close, and if an enemy is farther, it takes less shells, but they have priority aim. So I'd say that this pattern changes largely to her benefit. Also, all enemies get 3 defense marks upon spawning. When this ship's special attack hits an enemy, you reduce one of those defense marks. If you're reduced to 0, then you inflict special armor break for 3 seconds. After that 3 seconds, you're going to put 3 defense marks back on that enemy. So basically a weird way to inflict armor break. It's kind of like the opposite. I feel like most of the time it's like, oh, get to 3 stacks and you get armor break. This one, you start with 3 stacks and you go to 0. So same thing, different way of counting. At least the armor break is special, so it can stack on other armor breaks. All right, let's move on to skill number 2. This is her final skill. It is also boosted by the Augment module. Every 3 main gun shots, so you definitely want to put a fast gun on her, she's going to get plus 8% firepower. This can stack 3 times, so 24% firepower boost potential on top of the plus 10% firepower boost from the first skill. Also, when she reaches 3 stacks, she's going to trigger a special attack. This time it is the Heart Reversal. This is the one that reduces the torpedo load time. 2 seconds after this attack is triggered, you remove all of the stacks. If you're wondering why they don't remove the stacks immediately, it's so that she can keep her firepower boost of 24% for the duration of the barrage. Also, if the ship is in descent state, strengthen this special attack to the ultimate descent Mindbreaker special attack, and then you exit descent state. This is basically just an upgraded barrage. Okay then. This kind of seems unfortunate because it actually takes you out of descent state, and it does it decently regularly, whereas I feel like I might want to wait till Yumia is making a launch of her airstrike because I might want her in the descent state. But this ship, if paired with her in the same fleet, might just take her out of the descent state. Now, of course, she's going to help get more mana streams, so that will help get more often into descent state, so it might actually offset that, but it's just something to keep in mind. It's almost like you want the triggers of these girls for their descent states to be kind of sporadically spaced in timing so that they don't overlap with each other. Anyway, let's move on to the third ship, and this one is Nina, an SR battleship. Interestingly enough, stat-wise, she's very similar to Patricia from Atelier Yumia, although she has slightly more firepower stat and main gun efficiency at the cost of a noticeable amount of HP. Also, her Augment Module gives her reload stat, so that's nice. Her Augment Module skill also gives her plus 1% damage dealt for each of her battle multiplier stacks, which come from one of her skills. So speaking of skills, let's go into skills. Skill number 1 gives her a flat plus 10% firepower stat. Seems like a copy paste from Isla. Also, every 5 seconds, or when this ship finishes reloading her main guns, she's going to gain 10% to the mana stream. When this ship fires her main guns, she has a 100% chance with the Augment Module to trigger a special barrage. If an enemy is within 65 units of the ship, you change the barrage. But looking at the barrages, I can't help but think that I'd prefer to have the barrage that triggers when no enemy is within that range, because she gets priority aim and more damage. Additionally, in this skill, every 20 seconds, she's going to trigger a different barrage. If she's in the descent state, she's going to get a boosted version of this barrage. For context, the enhanced barrage has about 45% increase in raw damage output over the base one. Skill number 2, every time the main guns of this ship finish reloading, she's going to gain 2 stacks of battle multiplier, and this will stack a maximum of 10 times. And remember that her Augment Module gives her a damage boost for every stack, so potentially 10% damage boost. This is on top of this skill giving her plus 2% main gun crit rate and hit stat for each stack, so that's 20% boosts for each of those stats. When she has more than 5 battle multipliers, she multiplies her mana stream gain by 1.5 times. So basically, instead of 10% mana stream every 5 seconds, she's going to get 15% mana stream every 5 seconds. However, 5 battle multipliers might take a while to accumulate, especially if you're only getting them through her main gun reloads. The other part of this skill says when other allied ships hit an enemy with their main gun or secondary gun, there is a 15% chance to gain a stack of battle multiplier. If the allied ship is an Atelier Yumia faction ship, this is increased to 35%. So actually, this is the main way you're going to get those stacks. You basically want to have a Vanguard fleet that's going to be throwing a bunch of shots on enemies, preferably with main gun plus 1s. And then you're just hoping for RNG to be in your favor. And then once you do, you'll be able to put a bunch of stuff into the mana stream. It's interesting though, it only says main guns or secondary guns. So something like Yumia, which is a light aircraft carrier and has no guns at all, won't be able to trigger this. Maybe the next ship will totally synergize with this. That next ship is Lenja, an SR destroyer and furry bait. Stat-wise, she doesn't look all that promising. At least her base setup looks very squishy. She's mainly going to deal damage on torpedoes, but her torpedo stat is not super promising. Honestly, her stats are probably closest to Whiteheart from the Neptunia collab, and that collab is notorious for how much I make fun of it being really bad. Her destroyer limit break 3 ability is to reduce the spread of her torpedoes, and her Augment Module is going to give her at the start of the battle 3 flying sword stacks, so kind of like a preloaded stacks. And then during the battle, she gets minus 5% damage taken. That's going to be helpful with survivability. And every time this ship sinks an enemy, she gets plus 3% reload up to 5 stacks for a max of 15%. That on top of the torpedo and hit stat basically make her Augment Module required for her to be even playable. Her skill number 1 gives her plus 15% reload and hit stat. Also, every 10 main gun shots, if there is an enemy within 30 units, that is a little close, she's going to trigger a special attack, the Swinging Blade. Otherwise, she's going to trigger a special attack, the Wide Area Chopping. I did for a moment get really excited about this barrage because the one that triggers when an enemy is farther than 30 units actually has a slash. However, the slash doesn't clear anything, so That sucks. I guess you're still just gonna have to put a really fast destroyer gun on her though. Moving on to skill number 2. This one is also boosted by the Augment module. When this ship fires her main gun, gain 2% to the mana stream. With all her reload buffs and the ability to equip a destroyer gun, this should actually add up pretty decently. If only she had a main gun +1. When this ship fires her main gun, if the mana stream is greater than 10%, that should be easy enough, consume 10% of the mana stream and gain a stack of flying sword. What? So she's going to be actively preventing you from getting to the descent state? Every time you fill up over 10%, she's going to take 10% away, and you're not going to make a lot of progress towards that 100% you need for the descent state. Each stack is going to give her +3% to firepower, torpedo, and evasion stat, with a cap of 5 stacks and a max of 15%. Honestly, the cap is nice. With her preloaded 3 stacks, she only needs to trigger this twice, and then you can actually proceed to actually get to the descent state. Oh, never mind, I read the next line. Every 20 seconds, if this ship is in the descent state, I don't know how you're getting there, consume all of her stacks. You're going back down to 0. And trigger the ultimate descent Beast King's Endless Barrage, and then you exit descent state. For the next 15 seconds after this attack is triggered, plus 10% damage dealt to enemies under 10% HP. Okay, well, plus 10% would have been really nice and maybe worth all of that struggle, but for only enemies that are basically already dead? Okay then. They must have realized this sucked because the Augment module adds an extra clause that says each time this ship sinks an enemy in this time period, she's gonna gain a stack back, so she can get those stacks back quicker, because otherwise she'd just be stealing all of your mana stream. She's a total mana hog. So this skill effectively does not work without her Augment module, because the 3 preloaded is very important, and also the ability to get back those stacks once you basically get rid of all the stacks, deplete all of your mana, and then keep stealing mana so that you can't get back to the descent state. Like I said, this will work with the Augment module because they kind of like patched it with getting these preloaded stacks, but interesting. Okay, I don't like Lenja. All right, before I give my full event review, we have to talk about equipment because there's a lot of equipment here. The first equipment is an SR Hell Cube. At +13, it gives 44 hit stat and 18 evasion. This is the equivalent of an SG radar. And in exchange for getting rid of your ambush skill, this item gets a buff when it's equipped with an Atelier Yumia character. 20 seconds after the battle starts, she's going to trigger a prop effect that reduces an enemy's damage dealt by 8% for 5 seconds. If the mana is above 0 though, she's going to enhance this and you're going to reduce it by 10% damage, and then also reduce the evasion by 5% and the anti-air stat by 5%. So basically it's a massive debuff if it's on an Atelier Yumia character. Obviously it's worse than the SG radar on everybody else, but for Atelier Yumia this is actually really good. It's going to be helpful for debuffing a boss. I just don't know what ship you're going to put it on and be excited about. Maybe Yumia, so you can trigger it multiple times. Next up we have an SR Advanced Grimoire. This auxiliary equipment can only be equipped by carriers, light carriers, and aviation battleships. It gives 118 aviation stat, which basically is the same as a steam catapult minus the 90 HP. When it's equipped by Yumia specifically, no other ship, you reduce the first airstrike cooldown by 20%, basically making this one of the mandatory equipment for her. And then 25 seconds after the start of the battle, you're going to trigger a prop effect. And then if you have over 0 mana stream, you're going to increase the damage from this effect. This advanced grimoire seems required for Yumia, and also only ever used on Yumia. Next up, we have the final meteorite, another SR auxiliary gear. 77 aviation and 7 evasion is an interesting pair of stats. However, once again, it only gets its effect when equipped by Yumia herself. 25 seconds after the battle starts, she's going to trigger a prop effect. Like the last equipment, the prop effect will scale with the aviation stat. Enemies hit by this barrage are going to take 10% more aviation damage for the next 5 seconds. 25 seconds is not a really good time to trigger that, especially with only a 5-second window, but okay. And then basically if you have more than 0 mana, it's going to enhance the barrage's pattern. This one seems a little bit more lackluster than the other one, probably only useful if you're using Yumia outside of the Yumia fleet. Next up we have the SR Auxiliary Magnificent Glory. It gives 65 anti-air stat, which is nothing to write home about. When it's equipped by, once again, Yumia only. I wonder which 3 equipment they're pushing towards equipping Yumia with. She's going to equip a special anti-air gun, which is good because you're probably going to equip this in her anti-air gun slot that can be used as an auxiliary instead so that she doesn't lose her anti-air gun. Also, 25 seconds after the battle starts, she's going to trigger a prop effect, going to trigger an elemental barrage, once again scales off aviation stat, and then she's going to get a fire, wind, ice, or an electric barrage, and each of them is going to do different things. The effects last for 5 seconds. Enemies hit by a fire bullet are going to be inflicted with special burn. Enemies hit by a wind bullet are going to take 5% more damage from all of your allied ships. Ice bullets are going to reduce speed by 30% of the enemies hit, and electric bullets are going to give a minus 10% crit rate to the enemies that are hit. So it feels like a little bit of Pokemon typing in here. Honestly, I really like this barrage, I think. Once again, 25 seconds is a little slow. This is effectively just taking your anti-air gun slot. It turns your anti-air gun slot into a barrage slot and gives you all of the things you need for your anti-air gun. So probably using this as well. These are like your 3 slots. Yumia is a lot less flexible because they gave you like 3 slots and they're like, these are the ones you're supposed to use. In case Commander needed help, here you go. We still have 3 more equipment though, so let's go to the next one. The SR Magical Medicine Ball. This gives 472 HP stat and 4 speed. Where have I seen those stats before? Oh, right. The Weerbell Luft. This is definitely an item you want to pick up just for those stats alone. Its skill says when equipped by any Atelier Yumia character, 40 seconds after the battle starts, it's going to trigger a prop effect and it's going to heal 1% of HP to all Vanguard fleet. Okay, so it has a heal. If the mana stream is above 0, enhance the effect, and the heal is 2.5% to all Vanguard fleet and 40 additional HP to the lowest HP Vanguard ship. Okay, so it's kind of a nice heal. It's actually kind of nice because you could just run like 1 Atelier Yumia ship, put this on her, and now you have a heal. 40 seconds is very slow, so maybe you put it on Yumia herself, and then she becomes a heal carrier, and potentially can proc it earlier than 40 seconds. I don't know. Probably just using it for HP and speed. Probably should go in the Vanguard, not on Yumia, actually, now that I think about it. I just am not that excited about Lenja. So I guess Isla? Next up, we have the SR Auxiliary Tienen Armillary Meter. It's a standard HP item, so it's got that 640 HP stat at plus 13. If you don't have a bunch of these, definitely pick this up. If you have a bunch of these, you know, it matches what the top tier is, so still probably pick up another one. Why not? Its skill says when equipped by any Atelier Yumia character, every 10 seconds after the start of the battle, gain 10% mana stream. If mana stream is greater than 0, enhance the effect and gain 25% mana stream. So if you were worried about the mana stream, you put this on. This is almost certainly built for Lenja, actually, now that I think about it. You definitely need this on Lenja, because this will basically just get her stacks really quickly. Also, she's a really squishy destroyer, so 640 HP is much, much appreciated. So this goes right to Lenja. And then there is one more SR equipment, and I probably would have glossed over it. It has 118 aviation stat, which is the same as the other equipment. Its skill, though, doesn't do anything other than change the background music and gives you some cosmetic visuals if you put it on Yumia. However, fun fact, it can go on any ship. It's not locked to the hull, and that's interesting. Obviously, there are better things that you can put on a carrier, but if there was a ship that maybe isn't a carrier but would benefit from some aviation stat, particularly ones in the Vanguard. I don't know if there's a Dutch ship that I'm maybe thinking of that can equip this. That's interesting. I don't even know if it's good, but at least it is something that you can give 118 aviation stat to a Vanguard ship. There's not a lot of ships that actually care about that, but it is unique, so I guess this becomes a must pick up too. So actually the equipment's not too bad. A lot of it's obviously very much tailored towards the ship. Yumia has 3 equipments that she needs to have, and also those 3 equipments are basically only built for her. And then Tiananmen Armament is a good pickup. It's required if you want to use Lenja, but it's also just a good pickup in general. The Medicine Ball is also going to be kind of a required pickup. That one's really good, and so is the background music changer as well. So the equipment's pretty solid, so definitely do your crafting. Make sure you synthesize these, and that's the event. That's everything. I think the event is going to be really exciting. I'm a little scared of having to run this event concurrently with the Atelier Yumia event. Both these events have significant time investments into them, so I'm intrigued about burnout potential here. I remember the last event by itself was something, and now they're going to rerun that event, but this time with this new event too. Of course, the old event is going to get 3 times points. That's usually what happens in a rerun, so that's pretty standard, but it does make me a little bit nervous. If you're a little bit nervous, I'm going to be streaming this event tomorrow, Friday, and we can basically go through this whole event together. I will be getting a special guest who will join me, and we'll actually have 2 accounts to play through this. I'm really excited, so please join us tomorrow as we work through this event live on stream. Thank you guys for watching. I hope this video was helpful to you guys. If you're new to Azur Lane because you were brought here by the Atelier Yumia collab, welcome. Subscribe to the channel if you want more Azur Lane content. Thank you again. See you guys next time. Take care.